This is going to be amazing. You got a lot of people on this call today.
I think the biggest miss that people make in terms of selling it.
And that's what a good marketing message, good branding does.
How does somebody do something big in a very short period of time?
Harlan is practically the most connected person in the legal industry. I mean, he's bumped shoulders with all of the heaviest of heavy hitters in the industry because he's earned their trust, quite frankly, and he's delivered on his promises consistently. Harlan, thank you for coming on the show again. Great to reconnect with you.
Well, you're welcome.
So the ambassador of first impressions is a concept you've brought up a million times, and it's something that you actually, have intellectual property rights around. So what I wanted to open up is the question around how are the business owners and attorneys on today's session, like how are people hemorrhaging the opportunity of making that wow first impression, and what can they do to stop hemorrhaging that precious first 40 seconds of an interaction with a prospective client?
Well, I think you have to understand what ambassador of first impressions means. It means you're the very first person that's going to speak on behalf of your brand. You've spent a ton of time, effort, money, whatever, to get the phone to ring. And we put it in the hands of somebody at the front desk, which very often, and this is a little old school thinking, we pay the least, we have the biggest rotation in employment, and so on and so forth. But if you reverse that thinking, what would you pay somebody, or what kind of a person, or what would be the experience of somebody that calls your office or walks into a clothing store, I don't care where it goes, and you're the first contact? What kind of an impression is that? What kind of an impression is, an impression on your first date? And it's an underdeveloped, it's an underthought or underthinking, position. We're kind of changing that. We're understanding it with metrics and where society is right now. But think of the magnitude of that, but also think of the power that person has. And do we really invest in that? Do we understand exactly what's going on when that first phone rings from an existing client or a new client? And that's where I always begin. Yeah. Years ago, I would travel to a client and I would take a new set of business cards and I'd meet my client at the front desk and I would retitle the reception. You're the ambassador of first impressions. The client would look at me like I'm crazy. And then I would, hand her the cards or hand him the cards and reposition. I put a nice little plaque, ambassador of first impressions. Then I'd take my client, back to his or her office and give them the speech. The speech is, well, why did I just do that? Intake is an art, but intake is a relationship. And you can base your productivity on, they say, well, how good is your intake? Well, what is intake? It's a relationship that you immediately bond with a client. And there's a lot of different things you come to the table with. Knowledge, was I the first, lawyer that somebody called? There's a lot of different factors, but I think it really falls back to your brand. What do you want to be known for? Even if you can't help somebody, how are you greeting them? What is your brand? And your brand, in my mind, has to really perform and be exactly who you want people to do business with. What's your competitive edge? In personality, listening. You don't have to be brilliant. You have to be a good listener. You have to relate to people and at the same time control a conversation. And so that's where this all came from.
So when you look at people like Michael A. DeMeo, for example, who have created this Ritz-Carlton-like client experience, what are they doing differently? Is it the systems? Is it that they've created a culture Are there scripts? What are the, because you've worked with the best of the best of the best, and you currently do. What is the separator between the firms that don't get this and the ones that systemize it and actually put that on autopilot?
I would say not would say, I'm adamant about culture. You have to really think about how your culture really is. It's kind of, you talk about, Michael DeMeo. I mean, when, the quick story is he didn't have any money to advertise or do anything when he separated from his, when he left his first, job from a corporate, law firm. And so he had to figure out, well, what's going to separate me from everybody else? And it's going to be the culture. And he, I believe, did not even spend a moment in, at a Ritz-Carlton, but he understood how people want to feel. And so he developed, and it all begins with, the owner of the firm. Everything is from the top. You can't, unless you breathe and understand that kind of culture, it's never going to drip down. It's always going to be, well, this is a business plan, and, we have to be nice to people. But the core value is your brand and your culture. Answering the telephone with somebody that's really interested in answering the telephone, that understands it. How do you immediately create a bond with somebody? It's how you feel when you're talking to somebody really is the bottom line. And it begins with culture. Absolutely.
So culture is one of the hardest things to dial in on, because it requires leadership, and leadership makes people anxious. And there's a lot of insecurity around leadership because a lot of, business owners, attorneys, et cetera, feel that like they don't have that Steve Jobs inspirational quality. And so I want to transition to this concept of what gets measured gets managed. So what I've noticed has worked for our company is we send out NPS surveys, Net Promoter Score surveys, and we enforce this so that, everyone has to rate our service on a scale of 1 to 10 as to how likely they would be to recommend our service to a friend. And that has done wonders for our business to measure whether we're delivering on our promises and treating our clients properly. So my question to you is, what have you seen with the greatest law firms that you've worked with from coast to coast? How are they measuring this? So it's not just some fairy tale, zoomed out, oh, we want to be a great, great at first impressions for our clients. How are they measuring this?
Well, the most important measurement is installing metrics. I mean, there's no secret that my partners Eric Kaufman and Dino Colombo and I, came up with Lead Docket. Lead Docket. I'm not here to sell Lead Docket because there's other systems on the market, but accountability is the number one issue, an opportunity to get to where you need to be, because it allows you to measure. It allows you to measure your productivity. But listening to telephone calls. And I think another really, really important measurement is to have exit interviews. Have interviews, throughout the process. Having somebody get on the telephone and say, well, how did you feel about, how you spoke to my people? Not while you're signing a case up, not while you're litigating the case, not while the client is figuring out what their medical bills are, but it's a casual conversation, and you not knowing, or in a more powerful way, you knowing how somebody feels about you for the most sincere reasons is everything. I just want to, say I have a client and a dear friend that reached out last November to, I think, 10 of their competitors. And I never really did this before. They secret shopped 10 of their competitors, and 9 of them never asked how the client feels. There was no compassion. There was no, and I think 4 out of the 10 didn't even follow up. And so you're sitting in a market and you're saying to yourself, well, where do I stack up? How am I going to be different? What am I going to do that's unique? If you want to really separate yourselves from everybody else, take a moment to figure out where you stand. Do you have metrics that will tell you the honest conversion of your business? Because what you know is great. What you really want to know is what you don't know. That's where you make your improvements. And then I would record every phone call on the intake side, because it allows you to really analyze your business. Truthfully, you could be the greatest lawyer on the planet. If you're not making your client feel important or involved in the process, which is tricky, or confident that they're in communication with you, then you're a great lawyer that has a lousy marketing plan. And marketing is everything, because how you treat people and how you is all marketing. But what's the differentiation between you and everybody else? You know, Google spends right now, if you had to pick one thing that you had to get, match with Google, it'd be reviews, because we have to find a way to separate everybody from each other, and a review simply does that. If you could get a review that says, I not only got the billions of dollars that they said I would get, or I didn't expect to get, but I was treated like royalty, or I love the way I was treated. That's gold. Can you get a better recommendation? Can you have a better marketing plan than that? I don't think so. So I think you really, Bill, have to, as you just did, probably walking down that, that beautiful beach in Hawaii, you have to really take a deep breath and take stock. How do I want to be perceived? What is my brand? What do people think of me when I'm out of the room? And it begins with intake. It begins with how people in your organization talk to your clients.